This is big breaking news. FEMA is now preparing for a potential radiological and nuclear disaster. We are also seeing major earthquakes hitting today as well too, 6.8s hitting and over 200 earthquakes hitting globally. And these things coincide, all right? These big earthquakes could lead to radiological disasters and have in the past, and FEMA is preparing for these big events as well too. So let's get into all the details here. You guys can see here it says FEMA to test Pennsylvania's readiness for nuclear emergency at Limerick plant. All right, so they are getting prepared for a radiological disaster to happen potentially. It's not going to happen. There's no indication that that's going to happen, but they are doing preparations and telling the community that this is a threat, potentially people that live near here, and you should have preparedness plans and be ready. All right, and one of the main things you can have in your preps for these radiological events is potassium iodide and nascent iodine as well too are great. That's what governments use because your body absorbs radioactive iodine, which is a isotope that appears in these radiological disasters like this, and your body readily absorbs the iodine isotopes, and it's stored in your thyroid gland for a long time, right? So that's why iodine is the main one that you are worried about, because your body will just suck it up and you will be storing this radioactive isotope inside of your thyroid, which is right near your brain, right? So it's really bad for you. And you can see here a 6.8 just hit in Japan, and a 6.4 as well too, and a 5.9, 5.7, 5.6. Look at this. Look at the cluster and the earthquake swarm that is hit off the coast of Japan. And I thought these two articles coinciding today are significant. You see here 28 earthquakes hitting here. 6.8, very large earthquake. And I thought this was significant because this is right where the Fukushima disaster happened previously in Japan. Okay, so a major earthquake hit this coastal region. The Fukushima nuclear power plant is there, and it caused meltdowns and permanent damage to their structures, and it caused radioactive leaks to spread all the way across the Pacific Ocean to California, right? And these radioactive isotopes even show up in the wine in California from the year that it happened, okay, and the few years that it happened. So this is significant. This is a major earthquake, and you can see here over the past 24 hours there's been 245 earthquakes registering here with the USGS, and there's actually been even more than that, but the smaller earthquakes are not mapped with the USGS outside of the United States. So you can see here a lot of the smaller ones are tracked in the United States, but outside of the US the smaller ones aren't registered on this map particularly. So you can see here just in Alaska 60 earthquakes hitting, right? Alaska's really lighting up after this big one hit Japan, right? It's really not that far. I mean, if you look at the map from this perspective, we're just so used to it like cutting off at Alaska and then cutting off at Russia, and they're on the opposite sides. They're actually right next to each other, and Japan is right over here. It's really not far. So I believe some of this energy is transferring over into Alaska, all right, and continental United States as well too. You guys can see, let me get a good zoom on it so you can see exactly how many. There's been 128 earthquakes. Okay, so significant earthquake activity. You can see lots in California here, 3.8, 3.7, 3.2 in Oregon, another 3.2 in California, 3.0 San Ramon, California. So lots of earthquake activity, and I just thought this went well with this article, because if a earthquake ever did hit a nuclear power plant inside the United States, it could be a major radiological disaster. And believe it or not, there actually can be earthquakes in this part of the country. All right, we've seen earthquakes in New York and even in Pennsylvania because the Appalachian mountain range and the North American plate runs right through here, okay? And the Appalachian Mountains can have earthquakes, right? They typically don't have powerful ones, but it's possible, all right? So they're preparing here. It says federal officials will soon test Pennsylvania's ability to respond to a potential nuclear emergency at the Limerick generating station, as the Federal Emergency Management Agency announced plans for a full-scale radiological preparedness exercise on November 18th, 2025. So it says here, the biennial drill is designed to measure how effectively state and local agencies can protect residents in the event of a nuclear incident. FEMA's evaluation will focus on the 10-mile emergency planning zone surrounding the Montgomery County facility. Quote, these drills are held every other year to evaluate government's ability to protect public health and safety, said Lillian Hutchinson, acting regional administrator for FEMA Region 3. Quote, we will assess state and local government emergency response capabilities within the 10-mile emergency planning zone within the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So they're particularly worried about the 10-mile radius around the power plant in the event of any type of disaster, and they will be coordinating with federal and local law enforcement and local emergency response. First responders will be a part of these drills as well too. All right. It goes on to say the exercise, part of FEMA's radiological emergency preparedness program, will test emergency coordination, public notification systems, evacuation procedures, and interagency communication. FEMA will submit its evaluation to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission within 90 days, where it will be used in ongoing licensing decisions. A final report will be released to the public approximately 120 days after the exercise, right? So they do evaluate the readiness and if they are actually prepared as well too. It says here FEMA will present preliminary findings at a public meeting scheduled for 11:30 a.m. November 21st. So it goes on to say that the REP program, established to safeguard communities near commercial nuclear facilities, focuses on off-site preparedness efforts, including local emergency plans, public education, and coordinated response strategies. The NRC oversees on-site safety operations within the plant itself. For residents living near the Limerick generating station, FEMA's upcoming drill offers both reassurance and a reminder that constant vigilance and coordinated preparedness remain essential for protecting communities in the shadow of nuclear energy. Okay, so nuclear energy is relatively safe, okay, but the main risks that we have are natural disasters like potential earthquakes and potential war scenarios where cyber attacks target nuclear facilities, okay, and potentially allow them to overheat, all right, shut down their cooling mechanisms, or just lock them out of any type of controls, okay, so, or just take over the plant itself. So that's what we're dealing with in the future as well too, is remote access to these facilities. And there's been multiple warnings over the years that I've covered from federal agencies like CISA, Cyber Security and Infrastructure Security Agency, which is under the DHS, multiple warnings by them and similar agencies about how certain parts within the electrical grid are potentially compromised. All right, certain controllers and certain systems that they're using have potential backdoors in them, right? I've made, a dozen videos on things like this, these warnings that, either the FBI or CISA, things like that, have sent out. And they're always warning that these backdoors do exist in our electrical grid infrastructure. Okay, so, and these things are connected to the power grid. So it's something that needs to be totally disconnected, right? They like the remote access to these things. All right, it makes sense. It makes things easier. It makes monitoring easier. It's easier to install new systems and softwares and new sensors and things like that. It makes it a lot easier when things are connected to the internet. But it also creates vulnerabilities and access points for people to get into these systems from the outside. Foreign governments, bad actors, whoever it is, these vulnerabilities do exist. And we've seen, this war rhetoric increasing. Okay, so we've been getting warnings that we could potentially see some type of military conflict, and something like this could be a retaliation for it, right? It would be a big step, but it's also something that could potentially have plausible deniability because it could be proxied, okay? It could be, hidden who's actually doing it, or it could be blamed on someone else that didn't actually do it, okay? If there's a motive there for that. So just be prepared, be ready, know if you live near one of these things. It's relatively safe, right? 98% chance nothing's gonna ever happen. But there's still that small, like 1 or 2% chance where it's like, maybe. And if it is, you should be ready and you should have a plan to evacuate, and definitely have these, potassium iodide and nascent iodine, which is like elemental iodine. It's normally like a liquid form, and then the iodide is normally a tablet that's more stable, that's bonded with potassium. Okay, that's the only difference really. But both are great forms of iodine. There's also iodized salt. Even I always use iodized salt just to keep my thyroid filled with iodine, right? Just in case anything like this happened. And iodine has even been linked to potential IQ point increases, like 10 to 15 point increases, especially if children are exposed to it, because it's a critical micronutrient that your brain needs, and it's been linked to the IQ increases. Okay, our own government has even said this, and that's part of the reason why there was a major push to put iodine in the salt and iodized salt. So it's because, a long time ago now, the government actually used people. They wanted them, how do I say this? They wanted people to actually be smart. Okay, sorry, it's scrambling my brain, this concept of of thinking about this. They actually wanted people to be smart. Okay, so they would put iodine in the salt to help increase the IQ points. Go look it up. Okay, this is known. So my point here is, if you have this stuff and something happens, you'll be ready. And if you're already filling up your thyroid with clean iodine now too, it won't just be starving and be sucking up these radioactive isotope iodines that could potentially form or be released from any type of nuclear meltdown event. So thank you guys. Hope you guys are staying safe, staying prepared, staying stocked up. I hope you have big blessings for your life and your family, and I hope you have a big old blessed day.